right, happy Sunday night. I am thrilled, as always, to be joined by my brother John. You are looking awesome. Love the background, the whole setup you got there, and we actually got our high definition working on thanks to the programs that we use. We had an update on those, so man, you look fantastic, and I'm so
Oh,
happy
thank
that you're with
you.
me. So now you're looking great, but I got to tell you, man, I am over 2020. I am just ready for this year to be over, and it's starting to get a little cooler down here in Florida, so I feel like fall is finally starting to happen. You were talking about that last
Yeah.
time. So how about you, man? How are you feeling?
Well, what happened this week for you? Let me know. What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. So my son has been on quarantine. I mean, he's been feeling fine, but they had to shut down his preschool class and all that. So he's been
Yeah.
home. My daughter's still been going to school. So,
Mhm.
that's been good. But just juggling him and like my wife has been working nights and then I've been working days and we've been switching them off and still trying to pick her up and my work doesn't stop. Everybody's kind of like been dealing with this, but it's just, it's hit that point where I'm ready. Like I'm ready
I
to
hear you.
to move on from this year, man. So
I hear you.
uh, yeah, we just
I
got a
mean,
comment in. I think you can see it here. Beard looking good, Johnny from Kenneth Williamson. So Kenneth is on here. Hey, Kenneth.
yeah, definitely decided to do the no shave October. Just started early, basically. So we'll see how far it goes. If you tune in till the new year, it will be all the way down Rip Van Winkle style. So it'll be
Excellent.
good.
So I got to tell you, with all that going on, and I always love to drink dark beer, but now that it's like fall and like it's starting to get cooler, dude, I am busting out the big guns today. Like I can't
What
wait
you
to
got?
read this one to you. This is called Island Diaries. It's a rum barrel aged quad ale. It's 13.6%. And it says, find your way back to paradise with our version of a Caribbean nightcap. So that's what's going down tonight. Notes of
Dude,
coconut, banana bread, and rum spice meld beautifully with the mild caramel and the coffee like backbone in this beer. My wife took a sip of it, and her response was, whoa.
and now she's asleep, right?
So
Dude, if
that's
you
what
finish
that's
that
what I
before
got
this whole
tonight.
thing, if you finish that before the whole thing's over, man,
It's gonna be a
you need
great
someone to
episode. I'm so
walk you to bed over there.
so
Well, I thought I was actually doing pretty good local. I try to keep the beers local as much as possible. So this one is, let me see if you can see it. Yeah,
yeah, I can
Legend
see that. Oktoberfest?
Oktoberfest. Yeah. So with an October, just so to let people know, usually with Oktoberfest beers, you have multiple hops that go into it, but they don't go in at the very, very end necessarily for like the bitterness.
Yeah.
You put them in the middle for a little bit more flavor and such. And this one has quite a few in there. The Oktoberfest beers are usually a little bit on the sweeter side.
Mm.
They're easily drinkable.
Yeah.
The ABV that doesn't go above about 7% on these. So I like them a lot, especially a good way to usher in the fall. Yours is like,
It's
man,
more
it
like
is definitely
winter. Like
2020.
it's like deep winter, like like when no one shows up to your Christmas party and you need a drink type beer. Like
Uh, I'm, wait- I'm I'm really waiting for a brewery to make like the 2020 beer, which is going to be
Dude,
like an 18 percenter. Just forget the whole thing
I don't know if
ever
you've
like ever.
watched like any of the Netflix series that are going on now, but the Space Force, will like you've got
Oh
Steve
yeah,
Carell, he's like dancing
yeah.
to Jamaica or whatever. That's pretty much what this is. Like this is a Jamaican beer, which is where I took my wife on one of our first trips. So
Exactly where you wish you were.
yeah, so it's just getting through this year, man. There's so many things between the hurricane that hit Florida, like COVID is just sticking around. We're trying to go back to
Yeah.
church, and it's not easy. Like for example, at our church, we have an early service and a late service, and normally we would do Sunday school, during the early service. But now we have to clean like the entire like church between people coming and going. They have to sanitize everything, right? Like it's part of the protocols that they have that the church puts down on them. And so we have to do that. And so what do we do for the 45 minutes between like switching services? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we just figured that out today that was a thing. So it's just these growing pains of trying to get back. I mean, think about like the NFL season, right? Like Cam Newton, and it seems like half the Patriots came down with COVID, and so they can't have the game. Like, we're not worried about them dying necessarily, but like, it's just frustrating. The same
Yeah.
thing with the president. Like the president and Melania Trump, like we wish them well. I don't think there's any real serious danger there, but it's
Hopefully not.
frustrating, man. Like so many people are still getting this, and it's still like such an annoyance. And I'm just ready for.
Yeah, it's becoming real for a lot of people. I mean, especially, one of my coworkers, I read an email just before we
Yeah,
tuned in here, and they're out. They're out for the next week because they have COVID symptoms. They
yeah,
don't know if they're positive or not. They're getting a test as soon as they can tomorrow morning.
yeah.
Hopefully it'll be a rapid test, but it could take as long as, 2 to 7 days, in which case you can't come to work during that time.
Right. It's
Uh, so
frustrating.
like I had some days off and now who knows? Yeah, I might not. And but coworkers are falling out. I have a friend that I usually game with. His dad caught COVID.
Mm.
So like it's still going around.
It's
It's
this
still
Tom
it's still affecting
Brady
people. I
stage.
wonder if it's getting more real for people now that Trump has it. I certainly wish him well,
Yeah,
and I don't think this is a time or place to be to start, wishing people
yeah,
ill health or anything like that. So I'm kind of just, I feel like some people are behaving pretty despicably
yeah.
on social media about it. But I wonder if it's getting real for anybody
Yeah.
now that the president and people that they know are getting it.
Well, we'll get into that. Kenny just shared, it looks like some whiskey, some Good Nighters whiskey. I'm going to take a look at that. I just brought it on screen here. You can see it on the bottom.
See.
20
Oh, nice. Okay,
whiskey
good.
equals Good Nighters. So thank you, Kenny. We're going to check that out. If for those of you that are watching, if you get a favorite drink that you're having tonight or that you recommend, let us know. We'll be happy to feature it on the episode anytime you like, because we're always looking for something great. And we definitely need it this
Yeah.
year. Based on what you're saying, John, about it getting real for people, I think the effect of COVID has been real for everyone, right? Like the extent to which it's this like super dangerous disease is debatable, and it really depends on who you are, where you live. Are you in New York City where they
Yeah.
got overwhelmed, or are you in the suburbs, right, where they're able to handle it a little bit better because people don't live so close together? Like there's so many debates about that, but I think the realness of it in terms of slowing down life, people losing jobs, there's still businesses where I live that haven't come back that may never come back. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's
Same
it couldn't
here.
be more real for people, in that sense. And I think that's the frustration is, getting to this
Yeah.
point of now it's been what is it, 6, 7 months, and not being able to come back fully. Be coming
Yeah.
back in pieces is
And
really
that's
tough.
what's hard for us is trying to navigate, the social relationships that we have. I'm happy to hear about your church, doing sanitizing processes. And do y'all wear masks when y'all worship, or how does that
Yeah,
work for
so like
y'all?
when we started back a few weeks ago, pretty much everybody was in masks,
Yeah.
but since then, the state of Florida has gone into like phase 3 of really like lifting any and all restrictions on people. And
Yeah.
now it's not really like businesses can technically still require it. But I would say, in our church, most people still do. But once they sit down in the service, probably like half or so, like end up
Be
taking them off,
comfortable.
which kind of makes sense because you're just sitting there, like, you're not really
Yeah.
breathing on anybody because we're still kind of sitting apart and that type of thing. So,
Yeah, we're still trying to juggle the idea. I mean, we told basically ourselves, Ellie, and the school that Ellie's not going back to school for the rest of the semester.
mhm,
She's going to stay on a virtual environment, which is a hard decision to make. I mean, it would obviously be easier if we
yeah,
could send her back to school, but there were increasing cases just with the staff alone, no students involved. Getting COVID on that campus, and with her being diabetic, like it gives us more pause, and we just couldn't live with the fact that if we sent her, this semester and she was to catch it, like we would, we wouldn't be able to live with ourselves that she caught it.
yeah,
I feel like they I hate to say that they're going back too soon, but like if they would just give us the option, like every month to say like, okay, now can we go now can we go back? Now can we go back? But it's more like it's this date, it's the start of October, and then that's how it's going to be for the rest of the semester. And I just wish there was a little bit more flexibility
yeah,
for us to be able to like, okay, now we feel comfortable
right.
sending her
Hard to
back, and
do, with the
it's just not that
teachers,
way.
trying to, hire them on. How many do you need? It's hard on
Mhm.
their side too, the administration standpoint.
It is, yeah. It's hard. It's hard for us at the university too to figure out how we do our quarantine, processes and what hours we're allowed to, to work and that sort of thing. And even on a staff level, when someone gets COVID symptoms, like they cannot come into work. They got to report it, and they've got to basically stay quarantined for a while. But right now, the difficulty for us is having friends who do take COVID very, very seriously. They still want to go out, and do a limited number of things with what's open, but for our purposes, it's harder to navigate people who actually like don't want to take it as seriously.
Yeah.
So we're trying to like, weigh those options. We love to host our home every Sunday evening.
Yeah.
And we want as many families to come as possible. But right now we've, second
Doors
guessed that
closed.
because there's one family that we love absolutely who come, and they've been like, a second set of parents to Ellie and Addie and Ruby, and they take it very seriously. But like we're like the only family in their social circle apart from their family.
Yeah.
And then there's other families who like just have opened up their home, and they go out and they go to church, they go to the schools and all that kind of stuff, and they want to come over too. And we're just kind of like scratching our heads, being like, we want y'all here too, but it's going to make this other family uncomfortable, and
Yeah,
it's
see,
hard to juggle.
everybody's living in that type of situation, John. I think that's the point here is that we're all trying to find this prudent way to live of balancing like risk versus like what's appropriate for this time. And yeah, like I just don't see that ending anytime soon, but it wears on people, it just wears on you. Like, yeah,
Fatigue.
so, and especially like reopening up to some extent and starting to feel some of the benefit. But we hit things like Halloween, right? Like, what is appropriate for that? Did we just go back to normal? Like, do we not? Like how do we negotiate? Do we have Halloween parties? Like how many people? Like there's all these considerations, and like so much of me wants to be just like screw it. Like we'll just
I
go back to
know.
normal and like do what we do because I mean you get to the point where like so with my son he had to be quarantined for 2 weeks because someone tested positive in his class. No symptoms from the kid, and then no symptoms from my son, and he was still quarantined. And then we were asking the question, well, what if we get him tested? Can he go back to school? And they were like, no, because the whole class is shut down for 2 weeks. So even if he got tested and came back negative, we're still we're still here. And it's like you feel powerless. You feel like, come on, I want to be able to, and you just have to wait it out, right? You have to wait it
Well,
out.
yeah,
So
you have to wait it out, and like I can tell you, when we started, like we embraced the whole like
yeah,
shutdown thing. Like we got like construction paper and crafts, and we were making 150 Pokemon for the kids, and like doing all kinds of crafts. And now it's like if we have to stay home for like 7 days, when me and Ada Sue were getting tested, and we had faced the reality of like staying home like a whole week and not even being able to really telework, you're just kind of like, I am so done with this. There's not like Netflix is like done skis. I think that was cool for like the first little bit. Now it's done.
yeah.
So it's
So
difficult. Like you
not
said.
not a lot of easy answers, but I'll tell you where we're getting no answers is from the debate. So it seems like an eternity ago. Where remember when we were talking last week, we were talking about the Supreme Court, we were talking about Barrett and how that was going to frame the presidential like
Yeah.
election that's coming up. Yeah, not so much. Like
Yeah.
I think part of the reason, like, yeah, I'm kind of like over COVID, but I'm also over these debates that we saw, and I'm bringing up a picture now. Is like I remember
There it
texting
is.
you. Yep,
That's
that's
cool.
pretty much like it, right? Like him interrupting and like Biden pointing at something. Like it's
What
like
what I wanted for us was to like debate each other on beers. I mean, yours would win out for sure on 13% rum, Caribbean
I have one
origins.
of
Like,
these, so
I
for
would
now,
feel like
like
when you call out on air those who drink Bud Light, Wes, can you actually like just call those people out, right? Denounce them right here and right now.
Bud Light, stand by. I
This
don't
guy
know.
only drinks seltzer. He's fooling you. He's a liar.
Yeah, like oh man, that was not what I expected at all. Because we had talked about it, and on our other show, Refounding Fathers, we talked about what do the candidates need to do in this debate. And one of the most frustrating things for me was Trump has, in my opinion, all of these accomplishments over the past 4 years, right? Like, whereas as Biden does not. Like, there was a Saturday Night Live episode that came back, and they had
Mhm.
Jim Carrey who was pretending, acting as Joe Biden. He was like, "Just stay lucid, just stay awake." Like that's my goal, right? Like, and that was it. Like he's
Yeah.
not like who he used to be. And Trump has all these accomplishments because people said that Trump was going to start World War III with Iran, with North Korea. They said he was going to crash the economy. Like he had all of this momentum in that you can see from his policies. Granted, COVID hit and it's made it much more difficult, but like
Yeah.
he's like the pro-life judges, the whole thing. He's got all these accomplishments, and like Biden clearly was going to struggle to like make sentences the entire time, and yet because he was
You wouldn't let me
interrupting the
finish.
entire time, I feel like we didn't get any of that. Like, and then
I
plus the
know.
moderator, like, was not good at all. It was just, Wallace just couldn't keep control of the thing.
I
What
mean,
a
it was a shit
mess.
show. It was. I mean, I had to split it up into like 4 different chunks for me to get through it. I wasn't able to watch all of it live. I watched like the first 30 minutes of it.
Yeah.
I had to go back to work where I work an evening shift, and so like I listened to like the next 30 minutes, and listening to that was just, I'd rather like hear my girls scream in my ear for a bit. It was almost the same
It was so
sensation. And then I
frustrating
finished up like the
because
last hour. But you're right. It was frustrating. I think what I wanted from Trump was like, he obviously sent the economy booming. Like, I know Biden wanted to take credit for that. I thought he was pretty weak there. But I know that, Trump had the economy booming before COVID. He was right about that. I wanted to see like what his recovery plan was going to look like. That's what I wanted from him. And like, give us a 3-4 year vision for your next term. And there was nothing there. Absolutely nothing
well, they didn't
there.
even get to it, right? Like they didn't
Yeah,
even
never got around to that at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you have to hit a point where you allow Biden to struggle. You allow him to like hang himself because he doesn't have the capability to withstand the pressure of an hour and a half debate, right? And like
Yeah,
that would have become
for
apparent to everyone.
sure.
But they can't actually take those clips very much right now because every single clip has like Trump interrupting him, And I thought he had a chance and he did okay. Like when the one good line that I feel like Trump had from the debate was when he looked at Chris Wallace and he was like, "Oh, I guess I'm debating you now." Like
Yeah,
instead of
he
Biden.
did say that.
Yeah, that was a good line, and he should have run with that type of thing. But in order for that to like happen, like you've got to let it become apparent that like Wallace is asking biased questions, and when he can't even get through the question, like you don't really know, right? He's like, he was asking a question. He was like, "Oh, you don't have a plan," and then immediately Trump cut him off. But like, let him finish
Mhm.
the sentence, and then be like, "That was horrible," like the way he did with Megyn Kelly back when he was running for the Republican nomination, where she
Yeah.
listed off all these names that Trump was calling women, and he waited until the very end, and then he was like, "Only Rosie O'Donnell," like, and everybody thought it was hilarious, right? Comedic timing. Like you got to have the timing, and I feel like Trump was off on that. I felt like Biden was off, and then I feel like Chris Wallace was the wrong guy for this.
Wrong guy
Like
for that, for
if
sure. I
2020
definitely
was a political debate, it would have been the one that we watched. So like, just really frustrating. So I guess the big topic
I
from
don't think any,
tonight. Go ahead.
yeah, I just don't think anybody, if you were a swing voter, I feel like you would have turned it off within the first 10 minutes,
Yeah.
or maybe even sooner. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't think,
So
I think it just solidified the ruts, that the draw, the line, and people on one side, people on the other, they're just deeply rooted, and either Trump did amazing or Biden did amazing. Like, you're not going to be able to convince them at all. But I think any swing voter just would not go for any of these candidates. I think with Biden, his weakness was, I mean, first off, he tried to put on that presidential air. I mean, I gotta give him credit for the fact that like when coronavirus came up, he turned to the camera and he was just like, "You probably have an empty seat in your kitchen. It's because someone died of COVID." Like I felt like that was kind of an overreach almost to be able
a little
to
bit.
get there. But he was really trying to get to the heart of the American voter. And then like he would turn right around, and as soon as he was asked like I think a pretty easy question, say about would he pack the court, he's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
you
What a
know,
disaster
uh,
that was. Yeah.
that would be the issue. Then you should just go
And,
vote. It's like
yeah.
how can they know who to vote for if you don't stand up for an issue? It was like Aaron Burr and Hamilton. It's just
Yeah.
like,
We had
I'll
our
keep my guns close to my chest, and you're like, I thought he was the villain in the show, but Joe Biden's
we
like replaying
we
the
had
playbook.
Chris, right? Like Chris Souza, who's kind of the liberal Democrat voice, on our show. We have him on
Yeah.
like every other week to talk to us. Even him as a Democrat, as someone who's voting for Biden and supports him, he was like, "Yeah, it's supposed to be the issue. That's why they're asking.
Yeah.
If you're running for president, then the Supreme Court needs to be an issue." Like, so admitting
Right.
that is just telling us that like you're afraid to lead. And I was like, I can't believe even Chris is admitting that. So, right, that's such a weak point. Like, why would you pack the court anyway? Just accept the fact that like it swung conservative because Trump won an election, right? Like,
Yeah, I
I
think
don't, I
Trump
don't.
was really strong. I mean, I was a little bit optimistic that in the first 3 minutes or so, because that was, the first question, Trump was just like, I'm in office for 4 years. Like last I checked, like that was how it was supposed to be. So I'm going to be in office for 4 years and I'm going to make the decisions that I need to make. And I was like, pretty presidential. That's pretty strong. And I just feel like everything just went downhill from there.
Right.
But yeah, with Biden, I think that I would have loved to have heard him actually give 2 minutes, a 2-minute speech about something. And it just was not forthcoming for him, because I would have loved to have seen what he would have done differently aside from spend more, and I think what all we got was that he would find a way to spend more. But that was, I mean, we didn't get enough into the issues to be like, Trump wouldn't let him do that, to see what exactly he would stand for here and how he would fund it. We never got into spending, and that was frustrating.
I think everybody who follows politics closely knows that Chris Wallace is not an objective commentator, because he had that contentious interview with Trump recently, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that he's the most hostile interviewer they could have gotten from Fox, right? And maybe not from CNN or MSNBC, but from Fox, he's definitely one of the ones that's most hostile to Trump, because they've had that. But a lot of people don't know that, because they maybe didn't see that interview. Not as many people turned into that as obviously did the debate. So you gotta let him be biased, and then you hit him with it. You gotta let Biden talk about socialism, and then you can be see, this is what I'm talking about. You can't just hit at them before they've even said anything, because that doesn't give them that doesn't give people a chance to see what you're talking about. And it makes it seem like you're not confident, which that's my ultimate take on this, John, is if anybody should be confident on that stage, it's Trump. It's the person who has been leading for 4 years and who has a lot of conservative accomplishments that have made his base stand up with him. So, it's just surprising. But hey, they've depending on how Trump does with COVID, they've got a couple more debates. So maybe, he turns around. I don't know. We'll see what comes up next.
Yeah, we'll see what comes up with him. I actually felt like he was pretty lifeless about the whole thing. He had no way to redirect the questions, like you said, into something that was advantageous for him. I really felt like he was annoyed, and I almost felt like he didn't want to be president anymore. It just felt like that, He didn't. He had points that he wanted to come across, that he wanted to make, that were mainly antagonistic.
Yeah.
But nothing that actually supported himself. Nothing that made him support. Made him feel like he was supporting the American people. Never felt any sort of personal connection towards them, but not even felt humor about the whole process. It was just more of a deep. I was just sad, I was just really sad. It made me feel like, I actually might tune into the vice presidential debates here, and actually see if there's any sort of substance, because there might be a small chance that Pence could be, could receive some presidential power here in the next few days if.
Kenneth
Trump's
says,
diagnosis.
we just got a comment from Kenneth. He says Biden, on his best night, would have hung himself on generalities if left to do so in the debate. I totally agree, Kenneth. He was trying to say things if you watch closely, he was the 200,000 people who've died, how many of them have survived? If I had been Trump, I would have been what?
Give it that awkward pause
and be
I'm just going to give that about 20 seconds pause to understand what you said.
Yeah. Do you really want this as president? This guy can't even make a sentence, and people want to say that, that he should be president over me. Just let him, let the, ridiculous nature of frankly, just Biden being older, right? I went back and I looked at debates from when he debated Paul Ryan and stuff back in 2012. He was pretty sharp. If you go back to when he debated Sarah Palin, pretty sharp guy, right? On those things. I don't agree with what he said, but he was much sharper than he is in that debate. Age just takes its toll at some point, and that was just begging to be obvious, So maybe it will in the future debates. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't.
Well, I think, for Trump, on Trump's side, he had his brand to really support. He still does, but I think after 4 years of presidency, I think that he's just he's made that stamp on his brand, and I think he's just. I don't know, maybe if he's over it or what, but it certainly was just not his night at all. I think that is there a winner? There's certainly not the American people at all. But I do if I had to say one thing, it would probably be that Biden came out as trying to be the most presidential. That doesn't mean that he said anything. That actually probably more of a disdain on him than anything else. But he certainly came out as trying to stay on the issue, and trying to relate to the American person, and it just didn't fly. It didn't fly for either of them.
Josh, that looks my spot on Trump impersonation. I appreciate that, man. I'm not
pretty good. You had that gravel in your voice that I was like, man, I usually
I'll keep working on it. I'll get through. But the one other comment, and then we can kind of leave the debate, is that the whole like disavowing racist thing, like, man, that got me
Yeah.
frustrated because like I think Trump on his best night would have taken that for an absolute run, right? As if you ask him to denounce racist, you know, like don't just do that, but talk about what you've done for the black community. Talk about the economic relief. Talk about Kim Klacik running for Congress in Baltimore that you supported. Talk about like all of the different things, right, that he's been saying separately from that, because now you have a chance to just smash it, you know? And like that
Yeah,
to me is was like the biggest disappointment is
yeah, I mean, there were plenty of missed opportunities, Wes. I mean, like when they were talking about Portland, Trump could have easily said, like, I did pull them. I
yeah,
did,
I
pull
am
long
protecting
walk.
black communities, right?
And
Like
they still rioted and they still like destroyed property and hurt folks. Like what, I did everything that, was supposed to be done to help, calm the situation down. And y'all still rose up and destroyed property. Like,
yeah.
what do you want? Like missed opportunities.
Yeah. And so I hope in the second debate, that they at least have more substance at the very least. But then
Oh,
I
yeah.
also hope that like, yeah, the feedback is taken. And I think it will be. So we'll see. What we're looking at now, this is what I look at. I look at this like every day. So this is off of realclearpolitics.com. You can go and you can see the battleground states. This is what I look at just as a political junkie. Is I go
Gotcha.
in here and you can go to latest polls from Real Clear Politics. You can look at like the no toss up map. And this shows you, I'm going to break it down for you. If you go from left to right, you can see the state there on the left. These are all the battleground states. The number in parentheses is the electoral votes. So something like Florida is huge, right? They always talk about Florida. That's because it's 29 votes. Something like, Iowa, like it kind of matters, but it's 6 votes. So you can see how much it counts for. You can see the latest polling, and this is just kind of like them averaging the latest polls. It's not just one poll, it's a bunch
Mhm.
of polls. You can see
Yeah.
where they're at in terms of that polling, and then you can see there is that average right there, the RC Real Clear Politics average of those polls in terms of the
Mhm.
difference of who's winning. Then it gets
Yeah.
interesting because you compare it to 4 years ago based on the current time. So 4 years ago, 2016, where was Clinton at this time when we hit October? And what we know is that the polls took a huge, quick dip towards Trump right at the last second. In the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden the polls started showing Trump winning in like key states like Wisconsin and whatnot, right? So they started catching
Mhm.
that right at the end because people were like, you know what, we're over Clinton. And then,
Yeah.
the way the debates went down with Trump being like, wrong, like people loved that. And they were like, cool, we're going to switch over to Trump. The swing voters did, right?
Well, he was new. He was new to Washington. He wasn't, in Washington at all. He was the outsider,
Yeah,
and
but people made up their mind and they were like, you know what, we're going to give this guy a chance instead of like, and especially because like Hillary was not in those swing states, right? She was in places like California, thinking that like she needed to win the popular vote, while Trump was hitting like those key states.
Mhm.
So what happened was there was this lead for Clinton, and then it started to dissipate at the last second, and it switched. So you don't quite see that in the polls just yet because we're still a month out, but you will. And the question is that going to happen again? Because it needs to happen for Trump to have a chance. Because you can kind of see here, you look at a state like Florida, for example, Clinton was leading Florida about the
Mhm.
same amount as Trump is, or I'm sorry, as Biden is now, right? So
Yeah.
Clinton's lead, Biden's lead about the same. What happened? Trump won it. And you can see that in the next column over in 2016.
Mhm.
Trump won it by 1.2%. And so what happened is between October to November in 2016, it went from Clinton at 2.4 to Trump at 1.2, right? And so that going to happen again with Biden? He's right there on the same edge, and he could lose it just like she did, or he could maintain it. And so as we get down to this final stretch, it's like neck and neck to where Clinton was. Like they're at the same spot, and you can see that as you go down each one of these states. You can see it like within a point or two. Almost every battleground state is very similar now to what happened before. But, Kyle Walton on our other show, he thinks that it's going to do the same thing and that Trump's going to like swing hard at the last second. What do you say,
I
Joe?
mean, right now it's going to be a little bit difficult to say. I can tell you that Trump didn't do himself any favors with the debates. Okay, unlike the last
Just the
time,
first one. But the first one.
So,
It's just the first one.
right. But I think that also his campaign has kind of has derailed just because of his diagnosis. You know, I mean, he's out for who knows how long, right? He's canceled events. His campaign manager has it. You know, Kellyanne
Kelly
Conway
Conway has
has
it.
it.
Hope
You
Hicks.
know, so a lot of people are kind of off the rails there with with coronavirus. So I don't know how much that's going to affect it, but they've certainly canceled quite a few events in the upcoming weeks with just a month out. So I think that's going to, of course, affect things as well. I think that I would hope that there's another debate,
Well,
although I
do
don't know
you
how
think
much
that
debate
that could build
hold.
sympathy for him though? Because like,
It could, exactly. I've thought about that as well. Like it definitely could build up some sympathy for him. I think that the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi is getting a little bit of hate for how they've responded to his diagnosis. So there's certainly that media, just trying to lay it on him like, okay, are you going to take this seriously now, Trump? Are you? And then I think there's a good amount of American people who are saying like he has coronavirus. Just wish him well. Like we don't want that on anybody.
yeah.
So I think that it could garner a lot of sympathy. I just don't know where, if it's money, if it's not being spent on the campaign trail, like how that's going to affect things. So that's and the last thing, of course, is that he's made good on the justices, like you had talked about. I certainly think he secured the vote of the conservative side, who want to see more conservative justices appointed. So we know that he's not going to be just this unpredictable force, like I might have thought he was in 2016 about that.
Yeah.
But he certainly has a record to show now. And he didn't do himself any favors to play off that record yet. So that's the other thing that I feel like there's a few strikes against him that he didn't have in 2016. And then with Biden, there's not as much, I don't think, distrust of him as there was of Clinton. What do you say about that?
Well, like, yeah. So, I mean, I think with Biden, there is much more the age issue, right? Like
It's the age issue.
that's
That's the
to
thing.
me is much more clear. I think like if I was like Trump's campaign manager, I would basically, so that they're going to make it out of this healthy, right? Like that's already kind of clear, based upon getting treatment. But I
Yeah.
would say like you focus on a message of like a victory, right? Is you say, look, COVID is real, like it is dangerous, but together we can overcome it. Like I have now faced it, I've come out of it. Like I've beaten
You
COVID in
can
my
too,
own life.
right?
We're going to beat it as a country. Like nothing is going to stop us. I'm making a comeback. I'm bringing the Supreme Court justice like to the table in Barrett. We're going to make her successful, just like we're going to make the country great. Like you start to use the comeback from COVID as a sense of empowerment and a metaphor for the entire country's comeback. Because like go back to the beginning of this episode, and what I was saying was like people are frustrated with the whole like like, oh, we're only half back and like we want to be fully back. And like with Trump recovering from COVID, like that's a perfect time to say like the end is in sight. We are almost there. Like a vaccine is on the way. But regardless, like follow my example. I went and I got treatment early. I went to Walter Reed.
I've
They
done my part
did
to beat coronavirus. You do your part and vote.
I
I,
am the president who has beaten Corona, right? Like that's what I would, want to hear him say is a sense of strength. And then, like, if I was his coach for the debates, I would like let Biden talk. Like, just let him talk. Let the moderator talk, and then when they finally give you time, be like, I beat Corona. Like,
yeah,
like I would
like just
totally
explain
flip
the
his
entire question.
strategy.
Like I don't know what you asked me, but all I know is that I totally beat this thing. Yeah.
Have you beat Corona? Have you beat Corona, Joe? No, it would probably kill you. Like I
Yeah.
faced it. I've had it. I understand what we're talking about now. Personally, my wife has had it. We made it through it, and you know what? This country is going to make it through it. Like that's
Yeah.
the message that I would want to say. And like I yield back the rest of my time. I yield back the rest of my time. Like like and do the opposite. Be like, I don't need 2 minutes to explain my accomplishments. They're present to everybody, and they're just as present as the fact that I'm standing on this stage after having corona, which Biden said was this terrible disease that couldn't be overcome. Right? Like that's all you need to do is have a sense of like accomplishment. It's like the guy who scores a touchdown. Like act like you've been there before. You don't need to like showboat all over the place. Like do a celebration, get back, and then score another one. Have that sense of accomplishment in your personal life, like as the president, and then like as a leader for the country. So if he does that, I think that you could see the same type of swing in these battleground states. You could say, you know what, this guy's right. Like coronavirus sucks. It's been holding us back for a long time. Yes, some people have died from it, but you know what? Overall, as a country, we're going to make it through, and we're on the cusp of doing that. and like this guy is showing the way. Like I think you could see that switch if he comes out and he just does the same thing that he's been doing and like feels sorry for himself and complains and like, oh, I don't get a fair treatment, like
Right.
whatever. Like it's
That
like a
over
it's like a
pride.
coach again. Football season is it's kind of starting back, so I use football metaphors, but it's like the coach who like complains about the refs. Like, sure, you can do that for a second, but like, it's not going to change the outcome of the game. Like, talk about your team and how you overcame,
Yeah.
like that unfairness in
Like
addition to
you
the other
said,
team,
Trump
and
could
they
be
still
above it
couldn't
all.
stop you. Like that's
You
what
know,
I hear.
but
So
yeah, I think it's again that outside perspective of like, he came in, he felt above it all because he wasn't part of it. He wasn't infected by it, and now he doesn't really have that going for him. So what he needs to have is this: I came, I saw, I conquered
that's right.
mentality.
That's right.
And that would put him above it all yet again. And right now, all you see is that it's more of the same. Like he's become infected by the White House and Washington. So you're right. If he can project that image again, but there's not much time, and he's still he's still not well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back to the great leaders, in many cases they were personally affected. They had experience with what was going on. Like Reagan served in the military, so when it came to the Cold War, like he knew what it was like for people to serve. George Washington is the best example, like someone
Of
who
course,
had, he knew what it was like to be out there with the men. And so when you talk about a revolutionary spirit, like he got that. Like same thing with John Adams, like he understood very well what the revolution meant. And I think with Trump, he has a chance to really relate to Americans because he's gone through COVID, just like they have, and he needs to use that. So we'll see.
yeah,
For you guys watching, let us know. What do you think? What would be your strategy? What would you recommend? For the presidential candidate that you support, like what do you think that they should do to tighten this race and really make it interesting? And then
yeah.
especially as we go into these debates, we'd love to hear it. So send us a message here. You can comment below as Kenneth and Josh have. You can hit us up on our website, theburkingconservative.com. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. So hit us up. Let us know. And then if there's something you want us to cover in this show, we love getting together once a week on Sundays. Me and John just talking politics, talking philosophy, talking whatever comes up to our minds. So we appreciate you guys with us. So Jonathan, you want to take the last word and we'll be out.
It's also a good beer to drink. If
Yeah,
y'all got a good beer, favorite drink, whiskey,
we're going to try that
rum,
whiskey
all that's
that,
on the
that
table.
Kenny was talking
So
about. That sounds great.
yeah,
Good
send us
deal.
send us our way.
All right. We'll see you next Sunday night. Thanks, John.